Space, a final frontier.
Trekkie Dave here. Welcome back to my channel, and I've got my wife Julie here today directing me once again and helping me out. So today is today is episode 24. It's the second episode I've done in 2022. And today I'm wanting to do something that I haven't done before on the channel, and that's a book review. Both Julie and I are huge readers, and we've tried to instill that in our children as well. And I want that to be a part of the channel. So today I'm doing a book review on the James Bond book written by Ian Fleming in 1955. And it's the book Moonraker, which of course is, as I've told you before, is my favorite Bond film, but I'm reviewing the book today, okay? So something I wanted to just bring up, kind of like I did on episode 1, way back when I started the channel in September. The photo at the end, that's my father. My dad's name was Ron. So the way that my mom, Marjorie, had a positive influence on me in regard to Star Trek, my dad, Ron, did a similar thing with me regarding James Bond. Similar but different, in that my dad didn't read any James Bond books. My dad didn't read fiction books. He only read non-fiction books. But my dad was a huge reader. So it was different in that my mom, Star Trek was a passion for her. James Bond wasn't really a passion for my father. He simply enjoyed James Bond movies. And he was very casual about it. I'm not even sure if, talking to him, other than the film Thunderball, which was his favorite James Bond film, I'm not even sure if half the time he would have gotten the titles right. That wasn't that important to him. The one thing I do remember about my dad that I always thought was funny is that he was part of that old generation that felt that Sean Connery was the ultimate James Bond. And for me, as a child, my ultimate James Bond was Roger Moore. And I remember having conversations with my father where Roger Moore would come up. And my dad, he didn't mind Roger Moore, but he would always say to me that Roger Moore wasn't James Bond. Sean Connery was James Bond. Roger Moore was the saint. And at the time, when he first said that, I didn't even know what that meant. But Roger Moore was in a television show in the 1950s called The Saint. And he became James Bond later when Sean Connery retired from the role. So my dad would always refer to Roger Moore as a saint, not as James Bond. But my dad loved Sean Connery, and to him, Sean Connery was the ultimate James Bond. So yeah, my dad always saw the James Bond films as escapist entertainment. He took me to my first Bond film in the theater, and that would have been in 1979, and that was, of course, Moonraker, as I've talked about before, and that was when I was 10. Prior to that, I had seen my father watching Bond films on television, but my mom considered me too young to watch those films. To be honest, I don't think she really approved of James Bond. There was a bunch of things about it that she didn't like. I think first and foremost was the violence. My mom didn't like the violence in the James Bond films, and she didn't like the Bond sex shit. That was always something that bothered her, and comments she would make to my dad about how ridiculous it was, that the world didn't work like that, and this was complete garbage, like fantasy, the world doesn't work like that. So anyways, but what I do remember clearly is after I went to see Moonraker with my dad, and how much I loved that film, and my mom saw that. She saw that by me collecting the James Bond cards and just becoming kind of obsessed by that film. That after that, because what used to happen back then is we only had 4 channels on television. Sorry, I got to take a quick drink here. We only had 4 channels on the TV, and what would happen is a couple of times a year, one of the channels, I think it was CBS, would have an entire week of Bond. So every night at 8 o'clock, they would show a James Bond film. And I would watch them with my father. And after I saw Moonraker and became obsessed by it, my mom sort of just let it go. She didn't make a deal about it anymore. And I was getting older as well, so maybe it didn't really bother her as much. But prior to Moonraker, there's no way I could have watched a James Bond film. My mom wouldn't have allowed it. So my dad's favorite James Bond film was Thunderball. And one of the interesting things, about Thunderball is that, to me, Thunderball is actually my favorite James Bond book, but it's not my favorite James Bond movie. It would be number 3 on my top 10 list if I do a top 10 list of James Bond films. But what I will say about Thunderball, and something that I've told friends about to encourage them to read it, is Thunderball is a really interesting book and movie in that I consider it to be one of the best James Bond films. It's a cinematic masterpiece, but it's also a literary masterpiece. It's the only book and movie that I can think of where I almost equally love the book to the film. That to me is a very unique thing and something that I've always appreciated about Thunderball. But one of the things, or what I'm wanting to review today, is actually Moonraker. As you know, Moonraker is my favorite film, and it's my second favorite Bond book. But one of the things about Moonraker that I think is so interesting as a book is it's got a premise in this book that I think is so 1955 England, like British society. It's so out there that I don't think a modern, it's not a part of the 1979 movie for what I think is pretty obvious reasons. I don't think they could have it as part of the 1979 movie because the premise is just so grounded in that time and that morality that I don't think a modern audience would accept this premise. I'm just going to read a little bit from the book because I think it's the only way to really describe it. Like, I can describe it to you, but I don't think it will give justice to it. You kind of have to hear it. So in chapter 2 of the book, so what happens is at the beginning of the Moonraker book, Bond is on vacation in Africa. He's on a leave and he's called back to London by his boss, M. And he has no idea why. So the chapter 2 begins with Bond going to M's office and being kind of nervous about what's going on, like what's happening. Why has he been called? What's so important that M has interrupted his vacation halfway through to bring him back to London? This must be something huge. So what ends up happening in the book, let me just read it to you quickly. M calls Bond into his office and he asks Bond what he knows about a British elite gentleman named Hugo Drax. So Bond then gives M the knowledge that he has, the casual knowledge like everybody has in London about Hugo Drax. So I'm just going to begin here. Bond says to M, the Queen has been graciously pleased to accept the gift by Hugo on behalf of the people of Britain and has conferred a knighthood on the donor, meaning she's giving a knighthood to Hugo. Bond paused, almost carried away by the story of this extraordinary man. M then relapsed into silence, gazing out the window. He turned back and faced Bond across the desk. That's about it, Bond said. I don't know much more than you do. A wonderful story, an extraordinary man. He paused, reflecting. Oh, sorry, actually, that's M talking, not Bond. Okay? So he relapsed into silence, gazing out the window. So this is M talking. He turned back and faced Bond across the desk. That's about it, he said slowly. I don't know much more than you do. A wonderful man, an extraordinary man. He paused, reflecting. There's only one thing. M tapped the stem of his pipe against his teeth. And what's that, sir? Said Bond. M seemed to make up his mind. He looked mildly across at Bond. Sir Hugo Drax cheats at cards, M said. So then we're on to chapter 3. And it begins with, cheats at cards? M frowned. That's what I said. He commented dryly. It doesn't seem to you odd that a multimillionaire should cheat at cards? Bond grinned apologetically. Not as odd as all that, sir, he said. I've known very rich people who cheat themselves at patience. But it just didn't fit in with my picture of Drax. Bit of an anticlimax. That's the point, said M. Why does he do it? And don't forget that cheating at cards can still smash a man in so-called society. It's about the only thing that can still finish you, whoever you are. Drax does it so well that nobody's caught him yet. As a matter of fact, I doubt if anyone has begun to suspect him, except Baselander. He's the chairman of Blades. He came to me. He got a vague idea I've got something to do with intelligence, and I've given him a hand over one or two little troubles in the past. He's asked my advice. Said he didn't want to make a fuss at the club, of course. But above all, he wants to save Drax from making a fool of himself. He admires him that much, as we all do, and he's terrified of an incident. You couldn't stop a scandal like that from getting out. A lot of MPs at the club are members, and it would soon get talked about in the lobby. Then the gossip writers would get a hold of it, Drax would have to resign from Blades, and the next thing, there'd be a libel action brought in the defense by one of his friends, Tranry Croft, all over again. At least that's how his mind is working, and I must say, I can see it that way too. Anyways, said M with finality, I've agreed to help him. He looked levelly at Bond. That's where you come in. Okay, so anyways, that's the outrageous premise of this book and this story that I'm talking about. The idea that somebody cheating at cards, somebody who is respected by society, who is part of the British elite, who is respected by society in every way, would be considered suspicious because he cheats at cards. So anyways, without giving too much information here, I don't want to ruin the book if you're going to read it, which I'm hoping that you do. But what happens is, because of Drax cheating at cards, M initiates Bond to begin a full investigation of Drax. And at the beginning of this investigation, Bond begins to uncover a few really minor things that on face value appear to be nothing. But as Bond begins to pull at these strings, the Drax story begins to unravel. And that's all I'm going to say, because again, I don't want to ruin the book for you if you're going to read it, because like I said, it's my second favorite Bond book, but I just find that premise of a man cheating at cards and that unraveling his life over what would be considered right now in our society to be a very minor indiscretion. So I'm not sure in the grand picture what exactly this says about 1955 British society or what it says about 2022 Western society. But when I first read that, or the first time I read Moonraker and I read that premise, I was taken aback by it because it's such a crazy idea. So anyways, it's an extraordinary book, and that's the extraordinary premise of this book that basically initiates this story. So I'd recommend that you read this book because it's an awesome book. And that's the end of my book review of the book Moonraker. Okay? So right now I'm just wanting to do, in a previous video I did an Easter egg for my wife Julie, because this channel is about more than the content that I provide, whether it be a James Bond book review or my last video. What was my last video, Julie? I'm trying to remember. Wow, we just did it yesterday.
2 days ago.
It was 2 days ago. You don't remember? I don't remember what it was either. Oh yeah, my review or analysis or whatever of Batman Returns.
That's right.
So whether it's, you know, a book review or a movie review or whatever it is, I want the content, because really what this channel is about and what it's always been about is leaving something behind for my family. That's what this is about, because I'm dying and I want to leave something behind for my family, something that they can look at 10 years from now. So family is as much a part, I would say it's probably a bigger part of this channel. And you know, that's why when I started this channel, it was about my mom and her connection to Star Trek. And today I talked about my dad and his, you know, the connection that I had with him with Bond. And so much of this channel is about my wife and my two boys. I have two boys. And about family in general, because those are the people that are going to be watching this channel when I'm gone. Because this channel isn't going to exist anymore. It's going to be shut down, of course, because I'm not going to be around to do any content. So family is as much a part about this channel as anything else. So I just want to end this video today by quickly talking. I did an Easter egg for my wife previously, and I want to do an Easter egg for my boys today. And I said back then I would do one when I did a Bond video. So I'm wanting to do that right now. So I'm just going to take 5 minutes here and just quickly do a little Easter egg for my sons. Okay? So that's it. So let me just begin with that, okay?
My mom's not in there.
Yeah. So this is a family photo taken this summer, literally days before my brain tumor was discovered. Our family is proud, extremely close-knit and protective, which gives me solace and comfort during this time when I know I'm dying and I don't have much time left. So over here, so right there, the tall boy there standing beside my wife, that is my older son, Cole, who is 18 years old, and directly in front of him is my youngest son, Ethan, who is 15 years old. When I was in my early 20s, my dad had a number of smaller strokes. We found out later he had over a dozen. But it ended up leading, those small strokes ended up leading to a larger stroke that he died from. During that time, my mom had her battle with breast cancer that resulted in her death a few years after my dad. So I lost both my parents before I was 30 years old. And I just wanted to say to Cole and Ethan that I'm so sorry that I've gotten sick. And I'm so sorry I'm leaving you. It's not fair to you. You deserve so much better. And I wanted you to have better than what happened with me, with my parents. And I'm so sorry that this has happened. But I just want you to remember, just always remember how much I love you. Having you and raising you has been the greatest accomplishment of my life. I am so proud of the young men that you have become. You have brought nothing but joy and wonder to my life. I will always be here for you and will always love you. Never forget that. Your dad loves you so much, and he always will. And I wish I was there for you, and I'm sorry. So that's basically it. Love you guys so much. And so that's the end of this video today.